Yo, what up, my dude? How you doing, bud?
My dude.
My
Thanks for having me on.
my wonderful dude.
Yeah, that was quite a thing
Wait,
last time.
yeah, hold on.
So,
Wait.
listen,
Is your
okay?
mic turned down or?
No, actually, they said that too on dance chat. You might have to turn me up for some
I've
reason,
got you at
but it's normal.
200% and it's pretty quiet.
Really? Oh, maybe it is actually turned down. Hang on one second.
Yeah.
Let me see. Mm. Okay, how about that?
Oh, yeah, that's a lot better. Hold on.
All right.
I'm gonna turn you down now. Fuck, hold on one sec. It's fucking donation.
How many
All good.
pounds do you lose a week?
Should be
Also,
1 pound.
what kind of meals do you eat? I can't eat big meals in a 6 to 8 hour window. So I just die of unicorn and do a low-calorie diet instead.
Dude, just do what works for you, man. Fuck. Alright, what did you say? Oh, wait, oh no. What's up? How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, we're still on internet. I'm good, man. I had a bit of trouble with our last discussion.
Which is to be expected, yeah.
Yeah, well, when you bring on an expert to fight in a field I didn't even want to fight in the first place.
Okay, firstly, you pretty much repeated most of what I said. Secondly, I got like 3v1 for the entire earlier conversation, to be fair.
Yeah, but I don't spend 10 hours on stream every day debating people professionally.
you're
so
right.
when I get blown the fuck out in front of 4,000 people, it could be a little bit difficult.
No, you're right.
You
No,
might
you're
think, right?
you're right. I'm used to it, yeah.
Yeah, so here's the deal. You ever watch Dragon Ball Super?
No, but I've seen all of Dragon Ball Z.
All right, do you know Frieza?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know
Are
Frieza,
you in
right?
robot form now, or?
Yeah, Frieza never trained. He was just powerful enough to go through with it and just deal with it. And so I've trained for the first time, my dude. And now I'm Golden Frieza, okay? So
Oh, shit.
I hope Aaron packed your lunch because we're going to school.
Oh, no.
Yeah, this shit's gonna be real today, my man.
Okay. It's just a conversation. It doesn't have to be too crazy, all right?
No, it's gonna be a real conversation.
Just chatting, okay?
Holy shit, man. I did probably like maybe like 6 or 8 hours of research on this.
Of research? That's scary.
Yeah.
It seemed like it was mostly like internal questions that needed to be solved, no? Okay. Well,
Yeah, I think one part of it is, I think there's two parts really. I think there's the issue of the moral inconsistency that we covered the last time.
Mm-hmm.
But I also have a bigger issue with you
Oh,
personally
fuck.
and your platform.
Oh,
yeah,
no. Here
that
we
I've
go.
really had to think through.
Oh, boy. Here we go.
And I think okay, so where do you want to start?
Let's go. Let's get right to the meat. The bigger issue with me and my platform.
Okay, cool. Let's do that first. All right. I need to confirm a couple of things first before like I'm really sure that I want to go down that route, right? Because I'm not actually sure you might believe these things or not.
Okay.
Okay, so as far as your moral framework and the way that you look at the world, do you incorporate myth, belief, and emotion into those things at all?
It depends on the argument, but not. I guess I'll answer no.
Okay. Do you acknowledge their importance in driving any human behavior?
Yeah, of course.
In what way?
I mean, people, whether or not you make decisions using emotions, you have to live with and interact with people that make decisions using emotions. So.
Yeah, but in a framework outside of deductive reasoning, do you believe that myth, belief, and emotion can serve and drive human behavior positively?
In a thanks, Kami. In a framework outside of deductive reasoning, can they drive human behavior positively?
So let me expand. So like currently, the way that I see the ability that you make, the way that you make decisions and the way that you come to conclusions is largely through scientific method, hypothesis, and deductive reasoning, right?
Yeah,
Like
I think it would be called pathos as opposed to ethos or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to figure out is if that's the only vehicle that you value in making informed decisions in life.
Yes. Yeah, the answer.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, cool.
Oh.
Good stuff. All right. Okay. So I am going to try to make a case
Okay.
why belief, emotion, and myth are necessary and drive human behavior in ways that are equal to deductive reasoning and scientific method.
Okay.
Okay. And then my personal belief on this is that I'm perfectly okay with people reaching conclusions about life from mythology, belief, and emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of examples of how this serves us. Okay.
Okay.
And the outcome that I would like you to reach is that you acknowledge the importance of these things in your framework, because I think that the way that you approach this personally is fine if you didn't have a platform of thousands of people that I think are listening to you and taking the wrong thing away from it.
Gotcha.
So like I think that the people that I think that a lot of your audience doesn't think through the moral positions that you have, like you have thought through them, and they might come to conclusions such as like I should unload a clip of AR-15 ammo into cats because I think there's no strong moral reason why I shouldn't, or like I should take 10.5 grams of shrooms because that's like obviously the objectively highest human experience, right? These are really dangerous things that I think we have to be really careful about. But in thinking about them, I've realized the only way to really deal with this and talk about this with you is on the same level that you deal with things, which is like academically and with research. Okay.
Sure.
Do you have any? I don't want to like fucking like explode. I don't want to be one of those people that like takes on like 99% of the conversation. So is there anything about that before we?
I don't disagree with anything you've said so far. So.
Okay. Cool. All right.
Okay, just to preface this, okay, with a careful warning, okay. Are you ready?
Oh yeah, I'm totally ready.
I spent a lot of time thinking about these things, so just be ready for that, okay? So don't be upset or frustrated, and we're gonna be having a super chill conversation, all right?
I'm counting on it.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only time I'll really get frustrated is if there's a third party, and I've already asked Dan not to be here, and because the logical fallacies fuck up my argument, and I know you like, so this is a straight good old-fashioned conversation between friends.
Okay. All right.
Okay. All right. Here we go. So all right, so we're gonna stick to, we can get to the other memes later, but we're gonna stick to this like this idea that emotion, belief, and myth have an importance in driving human behavior. Okay, here's what I've come up with for this. All right. I'm gonna go through a series of step-by-step like agreements, and we'll just see if we like disagree on any of them, and then like we'll address them each in turn. Is that okay?
Yeah, it should be fine.
Okay, so would you say, number one, that human beings have the power to explain ideas, or sorry, to have ideas and experiences that we can't explain rationally?
No.
Okay, so let's start there.
Sure.
Can you explain your ego death rationally?
Yes.
How?
Psilocybin supposedly emulates serotonin in the brain, and that when you take a fuck ton of serotonin, it is possible for you to have conscious experiences that are nothing like what you would normally experience on a day-to-day life. How you experience those things is going to differ from person to person. It's probably going to have to be related to things that you've experienced personally in life, and then just whatever other crazy senses and shit your brain sends you while you're like overloaded on these serotonin emulating chemicals. Like that's how I would explain it, I guess. Like,
okay. Are you able to, can you rationally explain the experience of like hot or cold to people before? Because you've said before
no,
that
I can't communicate a conscious experience. Right. I can't. Now, not being able to communicate it is different than not being able to explain, I would say. But yes,
can you rationalize consciousness itself?
I can explain what I think it is, but to fundamentally explain the nature of consciousness, no, I'm not able to explain that. I don't believe an adequate explanation.
So then we're back to the axiom that human beings do have the power to experience things that they cannot explain rationally, as you've just said that you can't explain consciousness itself, correct?
Let me, I'm sorry. Let me be very, very clear here. So, okay, so the exact, there's one word here that's really important. So, human beings are capable of experiencing something that they cannot rationally explain. I would agree with that statement. Human beings are capable of experiencing something that cannot be rationally explained. I would disagree with that statement. Do you see the difference?
No, sorry. Can
Okay.
you elaborate?
So human beings are capable of experiencing things that they themselves cannot rationally explain, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I understand.
Human beings can experience things that have no rational explanation. I don't agree with that. Does that make sense? Or do I need to elaborate on the same statement? Okay, so
Still
it is
no. I'm
possible.
trying,
Sure.
sorry.
So it's possible that humans can experience something that they just don't have the ability to explain due to lack of knowledge, lack of insight, lack of scientific progress, whatever. However, I do not believe that things exist that do not have a material explanation. So, for instance, you might experience a certain thing like anxiety or depression or a crazy shroom trip. However, if we had the sufficient technology to explore these things, to tear open a brain and look at every single neuron, there would be a rational, materialistic explanation for all of these phenomenon.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. So just because I can't explain something or humans can't explain something doesn't mean there is no explanation for that thing that's not like a rational materials thing, would be my belief. Okay.
Yep. Okay, that's totally fine. The only thing I'm setting up is that human beings do have the ability to experience and have ideas of things we cannot explain rationally to each other. Correct?
That we can't explain rationally. Sure.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean there is no.
The absence. Yeah.
Sure.
It doesn't mean there is no explanation.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yep. Then I agree with that. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Cool. So would you agree that one of these irrational experiences is imagination, aka we can think of something that is not immediately present, right? But when it's initially conceived, it has no objective existence.
Wait. I'm sorry. Could you say that again?
Yeah. Let me think.
Or just say it again. Sorry. I gotta listen real quick. Right?
Yeah. So, one of the irrational experiences that we can have is our imagination, aka we can think of something that is not immediately present, and when it's initially conceived, it has no objective existence. That's what imagination is, right? There's no objective existence in something. If you imagine something, like if I imagine the design for a new house, right?
Okay.
At the current moment in time in my imagination, it has no objective existence. It doesn't exist anywhere.
Okay, so just because to make sure that I'm covering my base for where you're going, I would agree that the object that you're imagining doesn't exist, but that actual existence of that object in your mind could be traced back to some neuron firing somewhere in your brain.
That's fine, but it doesn't have any objective existence in reality.
Well, that neuron exists in reality, but the thing that you are imagining doesn't exist. So the house doesn't exist anywhere, but there is a specific neuron in your brain or a group of series of neurons that are connected that can explain that thought.
Maybe, right? But yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say maybe. I would say absolutely.
You would say it would be. Yeah.
I would say absolutely. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So would you then say that thing has an objective existence as soon as it's conceived?
The only I'm trying to be careful here is when you say thing, that pronoun, we just have to make sure we're referring to the same thing.
Yeah, thing's weird.
Yeah. So when you say that thing exists, the thought exists as a neuron or a series of neurons in your brain. Yes, but that thing that you are envisioning in your imagination, that particular thing doesn't exist.
Okay, so what part of it does exist?
So right now, if I close my eyes and I imagine a giant purple boat, that giant purple boat that I'm imagining doesn't exist. However, if you probed my brain, you could find the exact neurons firing that were responsible for the thought of that giant purple boat existing.
Yep. Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
Or even more comparable. I don't like using computers as analogies to human brains because they function quite differently. But like on my hard drive, I might have a picture of a massive giant boat. That now the boat itself doesn't exist, but the picture does. This would be analogous to the neurons firing. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So to go back there, I agree with you there. Okay. But you would agree that one of these sort of experiences, these irrational experiences, in the first axiom that I set up is imagination, right? And imagination is something that, when it is initially conceived, it doesn't have any kind of objective existence in our physical reality. It may have an objective existence.
So I'm pretty sure we're on the same page, and I'm just going to say I agree with you. And then if it goes somewhere where I wouldn't have agreed, then I'll. But for the sake of the argument, I'm pretty sure I agree with what you're saying right now, right?
Okay. Yeah. I'm not playing nothing. By the way, nothing at the end of this isn't like a Jack in the Box that comes out and punches you, right? Like,
Oh
what
yeah,
I'm
I
trying
know.
to
I'm
do-
just wanting
there's
to
no
make sure
gotcha
that
here.
I just want
Yeah.
to make sure that we are, if we're building arguments from their foundation, we have to agree exactly what we're talking
Exactly.
about. Otherwise, what's
Yeah.
going to happen is you're going to bring up things where you've like, well, here, Steven, I've exposed a contradiction, and then it's going to feel like I'm weaseling out of everything. I'm like, oh well, no, I didn't mean that. Well, no, I didn't mean that. Right? I don't want you to feel that way. That's why I'm trying to be rock solid.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm exactly the same. We're good.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. So we're there. Here is a big one. So I'm gonna make. I think in this part I'm gonna make a statement. Okay. I would say that imagination is the faculty that creates mythology and religion. Would you agree with that?
I'm a little uncomfortable with it, but sure.
Well, it makes sense, right? Because like the
What do you mean by imagination?
Okay, so again, the ability to create thoughts, ideas, and things that are not immediately present, but have no objective existence, right? But can be conceived on a mental level. So the idea of religion and mythology, like you obviously don't believe that Christianity is real, right? You don't think Yahweh's a real dude that's hanging out in the sky somewhere, right?
Sure.
So assuredly these things must have been the product of our own minds or our imaginations, correct?
Yeah.
There's probably no problem with that.
Correct. Let me say for a moment here, I don't believe in like genuine like inspiration that comes from nothing. That that all of these things that have been inspired are probably due to external stimuli that we kind of mix and match in our minds or whatever. Just to preface that. Do you agree or disagree with that? Because depending where we're going, that might be an important point to discuss.
So you're saying that all all conclusions that are reached in the mind are from like external experience or from like previous.
Correct.
Like,
I don't believe
yeah.
that there is any such thing as a genuinely unique human thought. That everything is a combination of external stimuli that lead you to thinking whatever it is you think.
Yeah, I think that's I don't. The answer is I don't know, but I think it's like a super fair place. Like I have no problem with it. Like
Yeah,
I think
okay,
it's a
cool.
super fair place to stand on. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. And okay, so and then just to confirm, like as we discussed before, right? So the scientific method, deductive reasoning, or pathos, as you would call it, I actually don't know what that definition is, but just going with it, like this has a far stronger means of helping us reach conclusion, or really is the only means for us to reach conclusions that are productive for human society. Correct? And religion and mythology have no real no real use there. We said that before. Just like
I
confirming it
mean, like,
again.
well, so let me be very clear here. You can use religion and mythology and all that shit to come to good conclusions. I just think that pathos in general will always get you there in a better way with less baggage. Would be what I would say, I guess.
That's different from what you said before, which is that religion and mythology and belief and emotion have no objective good. You said that,
so it would have depended on where you call me. So like, let me be very, very clear, okay? And I have said this multiple times in the past. I'm not just making this up now, right? So like, I can acknowledge that religion can give us some valuable or good things. For instance, you know, a lot of churches are involved in charity, in food banks and stuff like that. But what I would argue is that we could get these goods using pathos, and we don't need the ethos or whatever instead. But churches can provide some material good. Say for instance, somebody says that the sun is the devil, and anytime you expose yourself to the sun, the devil enters your body, right? That if you were to tell a society of primitive people this, maybe they avoid the sun when it's at its like highest point, and they don't get sunburn and they don't get skin cancer and die or something. So that would be like an example of like an ethos that gets us a good result. That I think pathos could have gotten us there as well, but ethos got us there also, right? Yeah. Sorry. Okay.
Okay. So your position. So I misunderstood your position because you didn't say that at the first point.
Okay,
You said so. Your position now, or your position has been. Sorry, and I want to like make you. I don't want to treat you like you've like just changed it.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you've
that's
said
fine.
this for a long time. Yeah. So your position is that scientific reasoning is always stronger, but that there's some use of religion and mythology.
Sure, and I'll be even, and I'll even find this too. Let's find this more. I think that science and reasoning should always be stronger. Yeah, I'll say that. Because obviously to some people, they're more likely to listen to a story than they would to scientific reasoning. So in those cases, maybe religion is stronger for them.
Okay, my first objective was to get you to say that, and my second objective is like to get them equal or kind of, I guess, as a matter of scale, to get them like equal or closer to each other.
Okay.
In that religion and mythology and emotion can
wait.
provide...
I keep saying wait. It's logos versus pathos, not pathos versus ethos. My bad. I'm using the wrong word. I don't fucking know. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
I don't know any of that shit either. Like, so that's the outcome, right? So if I can initially get you to say that religion, emotion, and mythology have some objective and beneficial use in creating a productive society, that's good.
Okay.
But I would say, like, right now you probably see that as like 90-10, and I want to move that closer to 50-50, right?
Oh, sure. I see it as 100-0. I think it's strict. I think it's bad.
You don't see it as 100-0. You see it as at least 99-1. You corrected that already.
So I believe that there are goods that come from religion for society, but my goal would be to get rid of all of all of those types of mythological arguments or whatever, and replace those with rational ones, so I can keep the good and get rid of the baggage of the bad.
Okay, so an ideal society for you is one that does not incorporate religion, mythology, belief, and emotion?
Yes.
Are you sure you want to stand on that platform?
Yep. Well,
Okay.
hold on. Let me see if I need to qualify this more. This is with me having the assumption that every human being is capable of processing reasonable logical statements and being aware of their own biases. That would yeah. So with that qualifier, then yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Let's move on then. Now here comes a big meme.
Uh-oh.
So imagination, we've already established, again, just going back just to make sure, right, that imagination is the faculty that creates a mythology of religion, emotion, and belief. Do you agree to that?
It's a pretty loaded statement, but I'll say yeah, sure.
Why is it loaded?
Well, that imagination
really
is what
simple.
creates all emotion. Like, is that?
Sorry, not emotion, but let's just say mythology, religion, and belief.
Imagination, sure, with real things like influencing those as well. Like mythology could also be influenced by like the existence of the sun or certain animals or something, but you would need your imagination.
Yeah, there are external stimuli, but these stories, like the creation myth, Genesis, came from somebody. Like it can't, like that stuff was.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I agree with you. Yeah, I'm just making sure I don't misspeak at all.
Yeah,
but yeah, I'm pretty sure I agree. Yeah.
Okay. So I would submit to you that imagination is the same faculty that allows science and technologists to invent new technology that makes us more effective, and is the same faculty that is the basis of all of your reasoning.
Probably, yeah. I think I would agree with that.
Yeah. Okay. So the models that allow us to make deductive reasoning possible in the first place are the product of imagination. So all philosophy, like Hume and Nietzsche and all these people, are the product of imagination, the same faculty that creates mythology and religion.
Yeah, that these two are generated from a similar foundation is essentially what we're saying, right? Yeah, I think I would agree with that.
Okay. What that means is that religion and mythology are not outside of science and reason, but it's in fact congruent with it. They basically have the same objective, which is to cope with problems of a human predicament, either mentally, physically, or spiritually.
I understand what you said, but I think this is where I don't agree now.
Yeah, that's good. Everything's good.
Okay, so, well,
yeah.
Wait, can we just not agree on this? Shouldn't we?
No, because we have to discuss it.
Well, we have to figure this one out. So let's say that you have a or let's say you've got a factory. Okay, the factory produces different types of automobiles, and the factory also produces irons, like that you would iron your shirt with. In this case, I wouldn't say that like irons are congruent or anything remotely similar to cars just because they were produced from the same factory. Just because some base is capable of generating two things doesn't necessarily mean that those two things are even remotely similar. So the attempt to...
It doesn't mean that they're not similar either.
Correct. It's a non sequitur is what it would be called. It doesn't logically follow. So I can acknowledge that that the imagination is the thing that creates our drive to create mythology and all that shit. And it could also be our drive for scientific reasoning. However, it can also be the drive for things like schizophrenia or any other number of crazy, fucked up things. I don't think that all the things that are created
science
can be
and technology can be the drive for nuclear weapons and destroying the Earth and shit like that. Yeah, so this is good.
Okay,
This
yeah.
doesn't create a problem in my argument. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Because what I definitely agree with you here, like 100%. What I'm gonna say here is, so this is the case where we need to, I think, have discussion, is that um essentially religion and mythology and science and reasoning are congruent, not because they come from the same faculty, but because they have the same objective, which is to help us cope with problems of the human predicament. Okay.
I would
So
argue
so
that. Well, sorry.
hang on. No,
Okay.
it's okay. Yeah. So what I'm saying is, you can't damn the faculty of imagination for the conjuration of belief and myth, but then champion it for its ability to create deductive reasoning. There's an equivalence here because the mind creates both outcomes with the same result, even though good and bad come from them.
Okay, so I don't think it logically follows that just because the mind creates something, or just because one thing generates two things with similar objectives, that both of those things become comparable to one another.
Okay.
I would disagree with that. So I would submit this analogy that we have a factory that produces guns and also produces food. And let's say that the goal of both of these things that are being created is for a society that's trying to remove a certain type of animal from a crop field or whatever. That with the guns, you could kill the animals. With the food, you could lure them away. Even though both of these things have the same objective, they're totally different. They're not comparable at all. I wouldn't say that they're remotely similar just because they share an objective with one another. And also, I might even take issue with the idea that science and mythology share an objective, but I don't think we have to touch that. This would be my first objection.
That's fine. Okay. So similarity, right, doesn't beget the objective, though. So whether these things are similar or not, I'm not trying to say that science and religion and mythology are similar. I'm trying to say that they have a similar outcome in the sense that they are trying to create a better model for which us to live by, right?
Sure, but the means by which they create that model are more important to me than the place that they're generated from.
Why?
Because the means by which they create the models gives us the predictive power of what will be most effective. So, for instance, there might be two loving mothers, and one loving mother wants to cure her daughter's scraped knee, so she gives it a kiss and then puts a Band-Aid on it. Another loving mother might want to cure her daughter's scraped knee, so she sprays Neosporin on it. Both of them love their children. Both of them are doing what they can to help their children. I imagine there are similar processes that generate both these ideas, but one is backed by a reasonable thought process, and the other one is backed by mythos or myth or whatever.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. That's fine.
Sure.
Okay. So what I would say, we don't need to agree on this to continue. It's probably fine that we disagree on this.
Okay, that's fine. If we run into
it's-
anything in the future though, where it seems like we need to backtrack, then
we can back up to this. Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. Because I think I would agree with you when you say, so in the exact example you used where you say, like, okay, you take two mothers and one kisses the child's knee to try to make it better, and one rubs Neosporin on it, right? I would also favor the Neosporin, like,
Sure.
right? Like, I wouldn't try to like conjure for you that there might be some like spirit that helps out with like the healing process, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So so now, like, that we're here and we're at this disagreement, this is like sort of all where I expected it to kind of start breaking down. The issue becomes a matter of scale, where we have to evaluate the ability for myth and religion and emotion to contribute to society, and then we have to evaluate the ability for science to do the same and deductive reasoning to do the same, and we have to come to the conclusion of which one is greater. And so like my problem here is again, like what we discussed before, that I just think you should shift the scale. If you're 99-1 in favor of deductive reasoning and emotion, or sorry, deductive reasoning and science, I'd like to shift that a little bit closer. Probably if I can even get you like 9 points over, it'd be good. So I have a couple ways to do that. Okay, so the first thing is, like, any of the great novels, like Damien or Siddhartha or Steppenwolf or Dante's Inferno, like, do these have any value to our society?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so these are fictions. They're creations of the imagination, and they're mythology. They're things that do not have any objective basis in deductive reasoning or society. Excuse me, objective. They don't have any objective basis in deductive reasoning or anything like that. There's no scientific or like scientific method or anything that was used to produce these things. These are products of the imagination. These are myth. The very definition of myth.
Okay, I'll agree with this for now. Sure.
Okay, so you've agreed that these things have great value to society. You've also agreed they're myth. So by equivalence, can't we say that myth has great value to society?
Insofar as creating maybe entertainment,
It's not entertainment. You said it had a. Is that all? Well, actually, let me clarify. Is that all the value that you said? Is that all the value you think those things have? Is entertainment value?
I mean, I think they are entertaining. What more value would you imply they have?
I would suggest to you, or I would submit to you, that they have massive implications for the structure of our very culture and the way that our nation has been formed. I could give you another example if you'd like.
Yeah, we should come back to this one though, because I can think about it more. But yeah, okay, yeah. What's the next example?
Are you familiar with like the myth of the dollar, like how the dollar is structured?
Wow.
Let me explain it. Like, so if you take a dollar, right?
Okay.
There's an eagle on it. Have you ever looked at a dollar?
Yeah, I've seen one before, but there's an eagle on it or an ego on
Yeah,
it?
there's an eagle on it.
Okay, yeah.
Eagle, like
Okay.
a bald eagle.
Okay.
The symbol of American. Yeah. So in one of the eagle's talons, he holds 13 arrows,
Okay.
and in one of the other talons, he holds a laurel leaf. The 13 arrows it's a myth. So in the that was built by our forefathers. So in one of them, the 13 arrows represents the 13 initial states, right? And the arrows are for war. The laurel leaf represents peace and diplomacy and discussion. And on the dollar, the eagle always looks towards the laurel leaf. This myth was created to explain that America, or to espouse that America should always preference itself towards diplomatic discussion. And while it has the means for war, it shouldn't try to utilize them first off, right? It should try to go towards peace and diplomatic discussion. And this myth became a foundation for how we run our government today. Now, given it's not.
I mean, that
so
seems
well
like a
right
bad
now.
example because.
No, it's not. It isn't, because these were the foundations and the preferences that were run by our founding fathers, and these were the things that helped America create the democracy that it has. So you may say that, you know, like the argument that right now it's not going well, which I would completely fucking agree with you with, right?
Okay.
It is not relevant to the actual importance of the myth.
Okay.
Which has led because the only importance here is that this is an example of a creation myth that has led our society in a positive direction for 400 years.
Sure.
Okay, so that's just one example, but
Sure. But then for
for
this example, I like the art one more because it's harder to answer. But for that example, I would argue that I would hope that we could come to similar conclusions without requiring that myth.
Okay.
The art one is harder to answer.
You might hope that.
Okay.
But that's not the reality of the human situation, the human
For
experience.
sure. But that's
yeah.
I've already acknowledged that like there are people that you can't communicate with using logic. They have to have like some type of story or some type of mythology in order to believe something. Sure. My goal though would always be to move humanity more towards the logic direction rather than continuing to keep them on the storytelling direction.
Yeah, but if you acknowledge that these stories and these myths have great value, why? So what I'm trying to explain is like, in previous discussions, I feel like I was sort of like boxed into a place where I was like this spiritual crazy guy that was like, you know, abandon all science, like fucking believe in gnomes and spirits and fairies. They will enchant you and take you to the right direction, right? But what I'm really advocating for is a coexistence of these things.
My problem is that like if I create a logical system where I say like we shouldn't go to war because of these negative outcomes, and this is why we shouldn't, then people can adhere to that logical system, and that logical system can be expanded upon and revised and refined for future generations. And I consider that to be an overwhelmingly positive thing. Myth oftentimes cannot be. You cannot change myths oftentimes. And what they end up doing is when they originally serve a positive purpose, what happens is because of all the baggage that comes along with believing in irrational things, it leads people to make bad decisions in the future because it's so hard to change how people view myths. That's my problem with using stories or myths or religion to motivate human behavior.
So I would say the caveat is that is only in some instances, right? Like
Yes,
the
but
myth
but my reverse caveat is that I believe that if you follow reason, it should happen in no instances. There are some instances where religion, like for instance, if religion tells you, like look at like the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill. These things will probably never lead you wrong, right? But if you have to believe in the 10 Commandments to get that, well, you also aren't allowed to work on the Sabbath, which is Saturday or Sunday, depending on what flavor of Christian you are. So now where are we? In order to buy into these things that should be rationally explainable, don't kill, don't steal, don't murder, don't steal, respect your parents or whatever, right? Now all of a sudden you have crazier beliefs that you've bought into as well, right? Well, there's only one God. I can't work on the Sabbath, like, which I would argue are negatives. That's why I prefer the rational over the myth or the story.
Yep, and I totally agree with you. The problem is that belief and emotion drive people in practical everyday life. You've not denied this.
Of course, yeah.
So any system that is looking to benefit humanity cannot remove them, because if people strive to exist as you do, with a system of raw moral guidelines, right? Without the consideration of human emotion and belief, it breaks the system because it's impossible and untenable in our society. So you have to acknowledge these things.
I don't know if it's impossible, but I mean, I can acknowledge these things.
It has never been done in any society. There's no historical precedent for it.
Yeah, probably. But we are more secular today than we ever have been. And my goal would be that even if we can't become what I would consider perfect, we can always strive to move in that direction and discourage moving in the other direction.
We could define secular.
Secular as an a-religious or a-mythological. We don't believe in myth or any of that or religion or anything.
Okay. What was that?
A door opening?
Oh, okay. That's like a clown horn or something. Holy shit. Okay. Let me think about that for a second. All right.
Like, so I can use, like, I'll use a lifting analogy. Let's say that we scientifically define the maximum amount of weight that a person can bench press, okay? And let's say that maximum amount is like 505 pounds or 495 pounds, okay? That's the max weight that can be bench pressed by any human being ever. Let's say that people start going to the gym because they want to be able to bench press more and more and more, right? One person could sit by those people and go, listen, you can try and bench press all you want, but you're never going to be able to bench press the actual max. You would have to start literally training from birth. Like, you would have to make your, like, 1-year-old kid do push-ups and shit. You'll never, ever, ever make it. Just because you can't achieve that perfect goal doesn't mean that the journey towards that goal produces incremental improvements. That, like, even though you'll never reach that theoretical max bench press, you will get stronger and stronger, and that is a positive thing. So I would argue that analogy holds true when we talk about the reason versus mythology here, that mythology provides a great deal of benefit to a lot of people, of course. However, I think that with reason, I think you can get most of the same outcomes without any of the baggage, and that even if we can never become a 100% reasonable people, I'm not even 100% reasonable, right? That it would still be positive to continue to move in that direction and discourage the other direction.
Okay. Let me use the same example.
Okay.
In a situation where I see that deductive reasoning and this idea could actually be baggage, right?
Okay.
For that person to actually decide to bench press, right? Let's say that they know. I'm going to use your exact example, not change it at all. Okay. So this person, in theory, knows every single facet of lifting and, like, knows the theoretical max that they're going to hit, right?
Okay.
And then decides, based on knowing that and having all of that information, well, fuck it, I'm never ever going to reach any point where I can be competitive or I can do it. Let's say that they have let's say they have, like, that cap is actually quite low. Like, you know, they'll never deadlift above, like, 400 pounds or something.
Okay.
And so fuck it, why should I even bother? But in the second instance, with the belief in myth, which I'm glad you brought this up, many men are brought into the gym by the sort of belief system and the myth of, like, becoming a strong beach body dude that, like, goes out and like, gets women on the beach and, like, freaking, like, just, like, totally owns and is, like, a super alpha, right? Like, they buy into that belief and myth, and this causes them to go do something that's immensely positive for them, which is to work out and get stronger. If a person had all of the facts, they might never start. right? So it's that initial belief in mythology and that motivation that drives them to do the positive thing in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's
And this happens all the time in society.
sure. I mean, that's possible. I would just argue that that's like a net negative, that we should encourage people to move more and more away from that and more.
But
and
I
more.
just gave you a situation where it's clearly superior to follow the mythology.
Well, you
instead
say
of
it's
the
clearly
actual...
superior, but in one end, I haven't given you any negatives of this, right? There's no negative to your believing in this mythology, right? Whereas with actual religion, there are tons of negatives, right?
Yeah, but what I'm trying to explain is that there's a lot of mythology. I think this is the big point that we have a disagreement on, is like, I think there's a lot of mythology that's innately purely positive.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah. So I think the myth of the dollar, to go back to that, or the great novels, or like the Native American mythos. So I can tell you a story, right? Let me tell you a really quick story. That's a myth.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, we'll focus on one or whatever, and I can give like potential negatives. But go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. In Apache mythology, there's a story about wolves. I think I've told you it before, but it's a pretty quick story. So the way it goes is a boy is kind of confused about his life and doesn't really know what direction he wants to go, or kind of like what he's doing. So he goes to the shaman of the tribe, and he says, "Shaman, some days I feel like I can, run across plains, and I feel wonderful, and I feel like I can bound across rivers, and I feel amazing. And other days I don't want to do anything. I don't want to hunt. I don't want to benefit the tribe. I don't want to do anything. Why is it that I have these ups and downs? Why is it that I feel this way?" And the shaman says, "Well, every day there's a battle that begins in your soul between two wolves. There's a white wolf and there's a gray wolf. The white wolf represents the white wolf represents productivity, positivity, compassion, and the gray wolf represents negativity, laziness, and fear, loneliness, the whole list, right? And every single day, these two wolves will get into a great battle in your soul every day that you wake up." And then he pauses, and the boy says, "Well, shaman, which wolf will win?" And the shaman says, "The wolf that you feed."
Okay.
Okay, so this is a pretty classic Native American myth, and it has very powerful undertones for how a person should personally develop, right?
Sure. What if this person takes the story to heart and tries to feed the positive wolf, but he actually has clinical depression and just ends up killing himself because he buys into the myth so much that he doesn't actually try to get like the real help he needs?
Yeah, so this again is I feel a false equivalency. This is where you're trying to say that mythology should be occluded from scientific and clinical reasoning, and I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there is an obvious objective positive benefit. That person who is clinically depressed can benefit from psychiatry and from medication, but could also benefit from this creation myth. So again, I'm advocating for the coexistence of these things, not the removal of one. You're the one that's advocating for the removal of one. You're advocating for the removal of emotion, belief, and mythology. I'm saying that they can coexist and that they're equal to doing so. So in my framework, a person that same person can take that mythology and benefit from it, but they can also go to talk to a psychiatrist and get medication and get on Wellbutrin and get on SSRIs and benefit. There's no reason why they can't do that.
I mean, I guess they can, but I mean, isn't this person going to be like more susceptible towards like crazy ideas in the future, whatever, if like he's believing in like wolves inside of his body fighting for each other or some shit? Or
why so?
Because he believes that there are wolves that are fighting in his body over some shit. And
that's not good enough. You have to provide an actual like moral standpoint.
Because there's no
you
empirical reason to believe this story is true. You're believing
that doesn't separate it from its benefit.
No, but I'm saying that like if the person is able to take into and believe in things that have no empirical backing, couldn't they wouldn't they be more likely to believe in other shit like that in the future?
Not necessarily. It doesn't follow. And the way you can see that too is like this coexists in our lives right now, right? Like I don't think anybody is well actually, okay. The people that are clearly on one side of the spectrum, like if you go towards the southeast or whatever, and you go into the evangelical crowd that like only believes in. I don't want to. I want to say that even those people have some kind of like deductive reasoning and like acknowledgement that science and physics exists and shit. Like they're not jumping off of cliffs because they believe God will catch them, right? Like they have some idea of it, but they're obviously really far into like my world. That's scary, right? What I'm trying to say is that it's equally scary to be really far off on the other place where you have no emotion and no mythology and nothing benefiting you, because that is not practical for people to live by. It may be practical for you to live by, but even you don't live that way. The very moral position that you're advocating is not something that you live by, because you know it's untenable in society.
Yeah, but again, just because I'm not 100% perfect at doing it doesn't mean I can't strive towards it.
But what I'm saying is that you coexist with myth. You acknowledge its value in the form of great novels and stories, and yet you cannot say that it has even any sort of small value beyond like but it doesn't have any value. It doesn't have any value to you. It doesn't make any sense. Like your position doesn't make any sense at this point.
Wait, why doesn't it make any sense?
It doesn't make any sense because you've acknowledged the value of these things, and you've acknowledged that they have great contributions to our society, but you will not acknowledge that it contributes in a significant way, the same as deductive reasoning and science does.
I guess it's just, I mean, it's possible. Like basically what your argument is basically coming down to is that people are too weak or stupid in order to form reasons or rational thoughts on their own.
Don't cop out. That doesn't
no,
matter.
I'm not copping out because this is essentially what you're telling me. You're saying that somebody is too dumb or incapable of putting together a reason for why they should improve aspects of their life. So the only way we can do it is to tell them a fairy tale that has absolutely no foundation in reality because we know that it helps people. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that fairy tales don't help people. Well, it is. That's exactly what you're saying, right? That fairy tales, the fairy tale of two wolves fighting inside your body could produce better outcomes. I agree with that. Placebos produce better outcomes, for sure.
Yes.
But just because something produces an outcome doesn't necessarily make that thing good or even mean that we should repeat it. I think that there are ways to produce better outcomes in society, and we should focus on those rather than acknowledge the fact that some people like to hear batshit insane stories and that helps them. That maybe instead we should say like, okay, well, I guess sure that can help people, but maybe we should educate people and move them to a spot where they don't need insane stories in order to make them better off.
Okay, again, you acknowledge a situation where where mythology played a greater role than science.
Yeah, of course, but I would argue that that's the fault of the person. That the person should be more equipped to deal with reasonable statements.
But Stephen, they're not equipped to do it. That's the reality. That like, and I wouldn't say like I think it's a jump to say that they're not equipped to do it because they're stupid. I would say they're not equipped to do it because the entirety of human emotion, of human experience, is based on belief, emotion, is based on these things, right? Science and deductive reasoning and these things only came in at a relatively like short period. In comparison to the entirety of human existence, right?
For sure, but the existence of things like science that has given us things like medicine have produced far greater outcomes than just going into the forest and praying that your great-grandmother's glaucoma clears up or something.
So it's produced far better outcomes in some ways. I would debate that it's produced far better outcomes as far as psychological structure and ability, right? We're more depressed and we're more unhappy as a populace in the first world than we've ever been. And that's pretty objectively provable. Would you agree with that?
Sure.
Yeah. So you're saying my question would be that they're beneficial for what? For human progress and technology? Yeah, sure. Okay, for people being happy? No. That's been the basis for what humanity has been happy based on belief and emotion and religion and mythology for thousands of years before science ever entered the picture.
Sure, but that doesn't mean we can't find ways to make people happier using things that we know that can be empirically proven to be true.
No, because that's not the direction that society is heading. Like these things have made us more depressed and more
there
unhappy.
are things that have made us more depressed, but that doesn't mean that it's the fault of every reasonable faculty that we become more depressed. I don't necessarily agree with that. So for instance, like excessive use of social media is something that we can link to depression or link to bad thoughts or whatever, or link to negative happiness outcomes. But that doesn't mean that we have to get rid of it all. Like we can still strive to understand why that happens and then use objective metrics by which to make people happier.
Completely agree. Yeah, that doesn't
But like if science, like we can use like
exclude
studies
myth.
and shit to tell us that like having friends and going outside and being active and exercising, like these are all things that we can arrive through via empirical conclusions. We don't need like myths or stories to get people to do it, or at least I don't think we should.
Whoa, so I agreed with everything you said up until the last part, right?
That you need to tell people fantastical stories to get them to buy into like things that can be logically concluded.
You're fucking structuring it like it's so like the way you're using your words is you're making it look like it's so bad to
because
have
I believe it's so bad, yeah.
Because you actually personally believe it, yeah. But that's not the fucking truth. You've already acknowledged all of these things. You've already said.
No,
that you
I've
understand
acknowledged
that myth
it,
has a
but
great
nothing that I've
benefit.
acknowledged. Yeah, but nothing. Okay, well, on the flip side, can you acknowledge that myth can be a great detriment to progress? Do you acknowledge that religion and stories can
absolutely
create...
Yeah,
Okay.
in the same way that science can develop nuclear weapons and can literally end all life on Earth as we know it. Like these things both have the capacity for great goods and great evils.
But science developing like weapons and shit that can fuck mankind up isn't a result of like irrational structures. It's still people choosing to do that. It's not like we accidentally discovered nukes. It was like people were literally looking for ways to do it, as opposed to
Yeah, but what does that have to do with what we were talking about?
I feel I like, well, it has to do with getting predictable outcomes, which is like my whole original story, right? Hold on. Like, like if we ever develop, there's a saying, I'm gonna go back to my edgy atheist days. There's a saying, and it goes, for a great man will do, or a good man will do good things, and a bad man will do bad things. But for a good man to do bad things, that takes religion. Have you ever heard that saying before?
I think I heard you say it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so like the idea behind the saying is that people can follow religion or myth or story and unintentionally wind up in places where their thoughts are just really bad. For instance, religious people that hate contraception. These people are evil. Religious people that hate gays and minorities or whatever, like because of buying into certain like mythos. Like I would argue that these outcomes are horrible. And for a lot of these people, the goodness that they get, donating to charities, loving their family, all of that shit, the goodness that they get from God becomes inseparable with the negatives, hating gays, hating contraception, hating women often. And I would argue that like, well, with reason, we can separate the good from the bad. We can take the good outcomes and we can only focus on those. But as soon as you get into a point where you have to start telling fantastical stories, it feels like you could always introduce really scary baggage that causes people to go to bad things, right?
Yep. I have no disagreement or any problem with that. The issue is that you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You're saying that because mythology and religion can reach these conclusions, the entire system should be discounted. But that's disingenuous. You can't do that.
But my problem is that it has the potential to. Whereas I believe that reason should always lead. If we believe that logic exists, that it exists independent of human thought, right? That if we can agree on this, that we should agree that reason should always be able to produce outcomes that we want without unintended, baggage that can't be analyzed in some materialistic way.
Okay, so yeah, okay, so we're back. Like, how do I do this? Okay,
I understand your argument, and I think that I think you've made your case. I think that your argument, your de facto argument, is that the world that I want is unattainable. It's impossible to achieve, and for me to push in that direction is irresponsible, because while I advocate for a reasonable platform, there are emotional people that will grasp onto the worst parts of my reason, and they'll treat it like I treat stories and myth, right?
Yes, and 1,000%. And as you, as a platform, as a person that has a platform of thousands of people, have to be more careful with approaching these things for that reason, right? Because these people will take those emotional and those irrational stances, and they will commit great evils under your name because they believe it's justified morally.
Sure, I understand your point. I think that's a fair summation of your argument. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, that's it.
Okay.
So
yeah, I think it's a valid point. I just fuck you.
Yep. No problem.
Okay. My personal goal, and I could be wrong on this. This is part of what I've said. I've kind of gone over for the past 2 years or whatever. Is because the thing that I'm always wondering is can people function the way that I want them to? And deep inside, I want to believe that the answer to that is still yes. It is possible that at some point in my life, I'm forced to acknowledge that no, people are just largely driven by emotion, and there's no real way around that. But yeah, I'm not quite at that point yet. But maybe I'll get there.
I hope that you do, because I think the thing that you could explore more is that to some extent there may be some kind of obligatory thing morally for you to do this because of your platform, right? And you could potentially turn what is right now a sort of potential negative into a positive with this thought process.
Well, like, my goal would be, I would rather convince 100 people to act correctly due to my thought process, rather than convince 1,000 people to act in a better way due to a thought process that I don't wholly endorse, that I believe can lead to other negative outcomes.
I understand, but if you conclude that the process is untenable for the vast majority of people that are listening to you,
that's what I'm not sure of right now.
Yeah, and I would submit to you that it is. Unfortunately, like while I wish that was the case, I just don't think it is. And I think that as you sort of explore this, you'll come to the same conclusion.
Yeah, maybe. I guess it just comes down to. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, that's the only thing I want to discuss. That's really, really important to me that that this happened, that this discussion happened.
Wow, thanks, buddy.
No, thank you. Yeah, and if there's any discussion we can have going forward that would, no, I actually completely trust you, and like as long from where you're at right now, I think you'll do good things. So
wow, thanks. I try to do the best things.
Yeah, I believe in you, buddy.
Sure.
All right. So there's a whole other meme someday about moral inconsistency that I want to go over with you, but I think we can leave it here for now.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that discussion in the future, sure.
Yeah, but also because I need more prep for it. It's an incredibly difficult topic.
Yeah, sure.
Like, yeah, all right. Okay, thank you, dude. Thanks for bringing me on.
Yeah. Do you have you ever looked into or dug into philosophy at all before?
Yeah, but like not nearly to the extent that you have. Like
what you're doing here in terms of like how you structure premises and then you have me agree to each one and then you lead me to conclusions is a really good way to do these types of arguments. I mean, yeah, you'd probably really enjoy looking into it. I've barely looked into it and I really enjoy it, but yeah.
Well, what I did was like I thought about it for a long time and I was like, fuck, the only way that I can possibly make any kind of like headway here is because I looked at all the people that come on and discuss things with you.
Yeah.
And they just go into this like crazy vortex of like fucking emotion, irrationality, and all this shit. So that's what I've been doing, right? Every time I've come on the cast. And I was like, I'm not going to make any progress if I do that. Like, I have to use a step-by-steps of
yeah,
like,
you set up like a reasonable argument is what you're setting up, right? You're establishing premise after premise after premise, and then invariably they lead you to a conclusion. And if I've accepted every premise and we're both reasonable people, I should accept your conclusion, right? So yeah, this is a really good way to have a discussion. Yeah. Yeah,
and I want to say also that you've taught me an enormous amount of things by doing this way to me. So like the very fact that
Are you saying that my strict adherence to reason and my avoidance of myth has helped you in growing as a brain?
Your strict adherence to reason has helped me grow as a human being.
Yeah,
your avoidance of myth is something. Yeah, yeah, it really has, man. Like, you've been such a positive impact on my life. There's to no degree could I ever tell you how much.
Oh well, thanks, dude. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean it. All right, I'll let you get back to your show.
Thanks, bud.
And once I have enough memes on this other thing, I'll probably come in and get blown the fuck out again.
No, I mean, this was good. I mean, you thought through everything. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, no problem. Good one, dude.
All right. Later.